All right, guys, this is going good. I'm really stoked. This is going good. I think people are getting a lot of good information. Next, we're going to move on to Keith for Black Sail for lighting. Now we've got our plant, our clone, our seed. We've got it sexed, ratioed. We've got it in a medium. And now we need to talk about lighting. Lighting is very, very important. So Keith, I wanted to ask you some questions to kind of help people understand where we are at lighting right now. So first of all, can you talk about the difference between HPS, metal halide, ceramic metal halide, and LED? Because those seem to be the ones that people are going to come across as they're searching for lights out there. And if you could just maybe speak on what some of the differences and advantages of either or are.
Yeah, for sure, man. And also, I just want to say thanks very much for having me, and thanks for the knowledge drop, guys. This has been deep. So, can you guys give me permission to share my screen? Awesome.
Yeah, I'll figure that out just a second.
Sweet. Yeah, the main difference I would say between HPS, metal halide, CMH, and LED is just the main difference between every type of grow light, and it's the efficiency. We measure the efficiency of a light in micromoles per joule. It's a fancy way of saying light per watt. For every watt that this grow light uses, how much light do I actually get out of it? So, I mean, you don't really have to know what micromoles per joule means as long as you're just familiar with like the range that you're going to be looking at. So metal halides are the least efficient, usually around 1.2 to 1.4, I believe. That might not be an exact number, but for a 1,000-watt metal halide, that's about the neighborhood you're in. 1,000-watt high-pressure sodium, single-ended is going to give you about 1.4 micromoles per joule, double-ended around 1.7. A CMH, the new CMHs are quite efficient. You can get around 1.9 micromoles per joule. And then for LEDs, good full spectrum, high quality LEDs will give you around 2.0 to 2.4 micromoles per joule. So then the next difference is going to be in the spectrum. And I'll just bring up some pictures here. So this is the McCree curve for cannabis here. This is the photosynthetically active radiation spectrum. Basically, this is the way that your plants utilize light. And this is based on legit science. Somebody went through and gave a cannabis plant one wavelength of light at a time and measured how much it used it and plotted this curve. So you can see you've got a nice little spike in blue up to 80%, and it reaches 100% or the maximum amount of efficiency over here in the red end of the spectrum. But basically you want to mimic this curve as a good starting off point for optimum plant health. The general kind of rule of thumb is that if you go heavier on the blue end, you will get shorter stalks. You'll get tighter internodes, and that's 100% fact. And if you go heavier on the red end, you're going to get taller plants and longer stalks. Also, anecdotally, because red light is more efficient for photosynthesis, anecdotally, people say it'll give you more weight, and heavier on the blue, people say it gives you more quality. You know, but those last two statements are kind of up for debate. So if you take a look at the HPS spectrum, kind of what you would expect, right? It's really heavy on the orange and the red light, not a whole lot of blue. You're going to get taller plants under HPS. Metal halide, got a lot more blue. Ceramic metal halide has actually a really nice full spectrum with little spikes in orange. But this is where I think LEDs really shine. If you look over here, this is a graph of the different spectrums from 3,000 Kelvin up to 5,000 Kelvin. And as you can see, like in the 3000 to 3500 Kelvin range, the output of the LED, the spectrum, really closely matches the ideal spectrum for cannabis. So this is part of the reason why you get healthier plants and tighter nodes under LEDs. You also get a nice real balance over here in the blue. And beyond that, I mean, for LEDs, like you just need to know that you're getting full spectrum diodes and that the spectrum is between 3000 and 4000 Kelvin. 3000 Kelvin and 3500 Kelvin are probably your best bet. 3500 is my favorite. And beyond that, you don't really need to worry about it, man. Like there's, no sort of magic spectrum. I'm not really big on adding in supplemental like reds and blues and whatever. Maybe far reds, but the thing is they're more expensive. So it's almost like if you're going to be spending that money on supplemental single color diodes, you're almost better off just getting more full spectrum diodes. If you want more red, get like a 3000 Kelvin 90 CRI. It's really heavy on the red end over here. You can see you're going to get plenty of photo and far red out of that. Okay, so the differences between the types of fixtures is also in the cost. And you always want to think of the cost in terms of dollar per watt. It just allows you to compare any size grow light and just know how much you're paying per watt. So HPS, metal halide, ceramic metal halide, they're all going to cost below $1 per watt, some significantly less, like down to like 40 or 50 cents per watt, I think. LEDs, good ones, high efficiency ones are going to be $1 to $2 per watt. And that's an upfront cost. Usually it takes about a year to a year and a half for the extra money to come back to you in electricity savings. But they are a lot more expensive initially for the fixture.
And so now if you're a beginner grower and you've got like a 4x4 tent, what kind of LED, say you've got a nice good full spectrum LED, what kind of wattage will you need to cover that entire 4x4 canopy?
Usually around 600 watts of high quality LEDs is a good rule of thumb. And I'll show you how to figure out exactly how much to get for any size space. So if you look over here at this PPFD chart, PPFD stands for photosynthetic photon flux density. It's a very fancy name for just measuring the intensity of light over a certain space. So it has to have like a size measurement. But the upshot is that 800 to 1000 PPFD is kind of the ideal range. You can keep on adding more, but as you can see, like you start to get diminishing returns as you approach 1500 PPFD. And the plant can only really utilize that under like really maximum optimal conditions. So, right up here around 800 to 1000 PPFD is the sweet spot. And the way you figure that out, I'm just going to kind of talk you through this. It's a math problem, sorry, but it's what you got to do. So if you take your efficiency in micromoles per joule and you multiply it by the total wattage of your fixture, you get your PPF. And that is just the amount of light that comes out of the fixture. And if you divide that by the area that you're covering in meters squared, you get your PPFD. So to give you guys, anybody who wants to can just kind of see the equation. And to give you an example, 1000 watt high pressure sodium in a 4x4 is really cranking down. You know what I mean? Like that's bright as shit. We all know what that's going to look like. You're humming. And it's 1000 watts at 1.4 micromoles per joule. So that's a PPF of 1000 times 1.4, which is 1400. A 4x4 tray is 1.4 meters squared. So 1400 divided by 1.4 gives you a PPFD of 1,000. And that's why 1,000 is kind of my high end range for PPFD, because that's jamming. And then to give you another example, I recommend a 2-pack of my 320 watt cannons for a 4x4. So that's 640 total watts times 2.0 micromoles per joule, which gives you a ppf of 1,280. Divided that by 1.4 meters squared is the area of a 4x4, and that'll give you a ppfd of 914. So kind of right in the center of that optimal range. So yeah, if you're using high quality LEDs, somewhere between 550 and 650 watts is going to give you optimum growth rates and yields. And if you want to figure it out for any other space, just use the formula.
And so now whenever we're trying to determine how far off the canopy the LED light can go, can you explain how leaf temperature differences between LED and like a HPS and the distances that we can have our fixtures off our canopy?
Yeah, man. It just it depends on the LED. Just to give you an idea, a 50 watt cob can probably be around 12 to 14 inches away from the canopy. My cobs are 320 watts, and I recommend having them 18 to 24 inches away. Boards, you know, like it just depends on how powerful it is, anywhere from 12 to 24 inches. The important thing is to get yourself a fixture for an LED. You want the height to be easily adjustable. Hopefully it's just hanging from a ratchet strap. And you want to raise and lower that light based on the height of the plant and also based on the plant response. The manufacturer should give you a good starting off point, and then let it get a couple inches closer. See if you see any bleaching or any signs of stress. You know, if not, see how close you can get it. And also in flower, you're going to be able to get a lot closer. You know, my lights, if you're running them 24 inches in veg, you're going to want to get them down to around 18 in flower, and the plants are going to love it.
I tell you, I'm running LEDs for the first time, and it's obvious to me. The plants are like, that's too close, bro. And then they're like, hey, a little closer. It's obvious. As an experienced grower, I can really see the plants reply to it. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going, bro. You had a good flow.
No, great, man. Thank you. And then also this gives me a chance to talk about lenses and reflectors, because that is going to affect how close you can run the light. So if you're in a space with good reflective tight walls, I would say, if at all possible, remove any lens or any reflector that you've got on your fixture. A lens is going to block the light no matter what. It's going to block about 10% of your light. A reflector, because the light's hitting something, an extra surface before it hits the plant, you lose a lot of light that way. And also, if you remove them, then you can just run your light a few inches closer to the canopy. So it's win-win. And like, you want your spread as wide as possible and your light as close to the canopy as possible. So yeah, get rid of your lenses and your reflectors unless you're like doing warehouse lighting.
So with the leaf temperature, you know, being differently affected by the difference between HPS and say LED, can you talk a little bit about any kind of terpene degradation over high temperatures? Because they say that you can run LEDs in flower in the mid 80s. And for HPS growers, you don't want to really be in those higher temperatures. You want to be in the lower 78-ish area. And can you talk about how having those higher temperatures in LED aren't going to volatilize your terpenes or degrade the cannabinoid profile of the flower?
So I think that the big issue with the temperature difference is that with LEDs, your actual leaf surface temperature is going to be closer to your ambient temperature. Because LEDs, the heat isn't coming straight down out of the fixture, and LEDs don't release any infrared. HPS, for instance, has a little spike in infrared, and that's heat radiating down to the leaf. So with LEDs, you know, the leaf surface temperature is going to be cooler, and it's going to be closer to ambient. So if your ambient temperature is a few degrees higher with LEDs, then your leaf surface temperature should be about the same as it was with HPS. The best thing to do is get an infrared thermometer and just check the temperature of those leaves. You know, in addition to, you know, having a thermometer hanging in your grow room, obviously. But I really think it's just the lack of front facing heat and the lack of infrared that, you know, to put yourself in the same position physiologically for the plant, you have to have the ambient temperature of the room a few degrees higher.
Excellent. Okay, panel, do you have any more questions on lighting?
No questions. I just want to say, yeah, I really think the infrared is really what's making the difference with LED. And I think it's a really noticeable difference. I mean, if you think about those, if you ever stayed in a hotel and it's got that special red light in the ceiling in the bathroom, and you turn it on after you get out of the shower, and it just kind of cooks all the water off of you, if anybody else knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, that's infrared light, and HPS light and certain other kinds of light put out that infrared light and kind of cook your plants when you're growing with them. And so using an LED light that doesn't put out that much infrared light makes a really big difference.